back to Project Infinite. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Tyler.
And today's episode, it's going to be kind of one of my, a little bit more, so far, one of my favorite topics to speak on. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a little bit about nature. Well, actually, the majority of it is going to be, it's mainly going to be nature, but we're going to go into detail about some other things here. We're going to be speaking about a form of animism. If you don't know what animism is, it's more of it's just like a certain belief in the spiritual identity in animals and pretty much the spiritual entity in anything that exists. We're going to speak on different levels of awareness in animals and in other things too. We'll be speaking about awareness, that being in densities, the relationship that we have with nature. Towards the end, we're going to talk about the 7 sacred laws. These laws inform us on how we should be living life in relationship with all on earth. It's just something that we feel, it's a thing that we feel that needs to be shared with people that don't necessarily follow some of the if you've ever hung around a Native American community, you kind of get the idea of what direction they're kind of going in whenever they speak about they kind of have like their own traditions and their own beliefs and stuff, and in a way it's not a religion, it's just a belief system that a lot of people follow. Each sacred law is represented by an animal. Again, it's reminding us of our relationship with nature. With that being said, let's start off with densities of consciousness, I guess.
Yeah. Sorry. So when it comes to densities, there's a good way to really look at it. It's there certain levels of awareness, and I suppose a good way to explain what a density is, being like a level of consciousness. If you look at, you probably haven't heard the word density in relationship to consciousness, but you guys have probably all heard like the word dimension. Like you kind of hear this a lot, like the 4th dimension, the 5th dimension, and when you think of like a spiritual evolution, oftentimes people will talk about like the 5th dimension or 4th dimension, things like that. There is a difference between dimensions and densities. When you look at dimensions, it's more so your outside view, the outside world. The higher the dimensions you go, the more it informs your perception of that outside view of whatever it is you're looking at. That's more so the dimensions. And densities is more so your inner journey. It's what goes on inside of you. That is more so what density speaks to. It's your level of consciousness, how you are as not just a person, but I mean when you think of this anything, well, all things have spirit. It's more so the evolution of all of life from where it begins, and where it continues to evolve. When we think of so I suppose we can start it off as we'll just start off with like first density. We're not gonna go so far into the densities. We're gonna just kind of stop at a certain point. Maybe in another episode we'll talk about higher densities, but we're gonna kind of keep it to a certain point, because this level of densities that we're gonna stop at is more so, it pertains more to the topics at hand. So when we talk about first density, the most basic way to look at that, what a first density being is, and being, well, everything it springs from a being. Everything is some form of a being. You look at the 4 elements: earth, water, air, and fire. All of those are beings as well. That is, I'd say, the most basic way of looking at a first density. Of course, then you get into like, your physical matter, energy, your atoms, molecules, subatomic particles, all the way down to the most, until you get to that infinite nothingness. That's It's as soon as the invisible nothingness, which it's not really nothing, that nothingness contains all infinite possibilities. It's when that nothingness starts to express something. It expresses some sort of form, sort of physical form, and at the most basic level, that's a subatomic particle. And that's, of course, you get things like, when a subatom. I don't know the full science behind it, but the well, like the Big Bang, all of that, like that is a good. That's a good way of looking at the first density, is that level of life. And then, of course, through billions and billions and billions of years, like evolution at that level of existence goes for so long you can't even fathom it. It goes on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of years, maybe even billions of years, maybe even hundreds of billions of years. There's no telling. There's really no telling how long a particular life form stays at that first density level. And I mean, there really is no, because even as we walk Earth right now, like there's first density beings all over the place. So it's honestly almost in a timeless state. This where this first density is. Um, so there's really no time when it particularly ends. Uh, because like new life is always forming, so it's always gonna first density is always gonna be, um, and there kind of is no end to something. But when you look at life from like an individual perspective, yeah, first density comes to an end for a certain being, because of course all beings everywhere at some point evolved from the first density, the and all things evolve through that, through these ladders. And like I said, life is constantly creating itself. It's constantly going. So it's almost like a species. As long as you keep on going, like you grow up from an adult, from a seed to birth inside of into the womb, out into the world, and then you grow up as a human being. Yeah, like in that way, yeah, you grow up, but the species will, it'll constantly continue. um so we get that, and then, you know I can't remember the specific words I've heard before. I think when it comes to elements, I think it's wind. Hmm. I wish I would have been more prepared for this thing. I just thought of it as we were coming along. Um. Well, anyways, the within the elements, earth, water, air, and fire, something happens between those elements to where they learn how to form like physical matter. That's when you get things like, you get planets, for example. uh, and from there, you get this, you get to the second density level of things, and that's where we're getting to, like the biological matters. um, and then through, again, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years, or hundreds and hundreds of millions of thousands, or how, a bunch. Let's just say that a bunch. It might as well be eternity for all
Lots
we
of time.
yeah, for all we know. I mean, is hundreds and hundreds of billions of years, hundreds and hundreds of millions of years. It might as well be an eternity, Um, but life exists at this level, and of course, um, from there on, I mean, each planet kind of goes at its own pace at that point. Um, there's no telling when these when planets will evolve to a point where it can inhabit life. All planets have the potential to inhabit life at on one level or another. Um, but at some point, and it's at some point in a planetary sphere, during its evolution, it gets to house animals, um, group species.
Yeah, this is kind of where like this is where the animals kind of fall into place, and it's not just animals, it's plants too. I mean, plants obviously, like you can see a plant grow from nothing to something. That's in a way, that's awareness in a line, I guess you can say. So something can start from nothing and then grow into something. But the thing about plants, they don't necessarily possess a an ego, like a form of I mean, I'm sure like there is a self-awareness there somewhere, because like obviously we do need plants, we do need trees and stuff to exist, but they don't possess a self-awareness like humans do. Animals, they do they do make choices, but they mainly act on instinct, and that's the difference between us and animals. Animals fall into the second density way of living.
Yeah, it's not like, I suppose it's not like choices what we would think. It's not like oh, I'm gonna like planning out your day, or I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna go make myself some coffee, and then I'm gonna go sit down and watch the news, and then I'm gonna do this and that. No, like their choices are more so like the instinctual level of choice. Like when they're hungry, they got to get up and go do something. But it's not like they're saying like, it's not like I'm Tony the tiger and I'm gonna go find, I'm gonna go kill whatever tigers eat, gazelles or whatever. It's not like they're making a choice like that. Like they have no choice but to follow that instinct and to nourish themselves and like feed that hunger. And then when it comes to like a threat, like they don't think about it. They go with like what's natural. They're either gonna fight or they're gonna run. Like they're gonna run away or they're gonna fight to the death or whatever, or just have a scuffle until somebody submits and maybe they walk away from each other. But it's not like they're thinking like, I'm gonna see you later, or they don't. It's not like they're holding a grudge or anything. They're just they're not thinking about it.
They don't possess an ego like you and I possess an ego. Like
Yeah.
we have the ability to differentiate and choose between things. Animals don't. They just solemnly act on instinct, which is why a lot of times, like you said this earlier, don't try to go out into nature and try to become friends with an animal. Like don't think that you can just go out there and pet a bear because like you think you have a mystical way with animals, because the bear is probably going to act on instinct and see you as a threat and probably tear you apart.
Especially if it's a mother bear too.
Yeah. If you approach any mountain lion that's a mother that's got cubs roaming around, a mama bear, a wolf protecting their cubs, they're going to go out of their way, because once they see another creature such as him and I, or another being approaching the territory which they're inhabiting, where where their cubs are at, they're going to see that as a high level threat, and they're going to do what they can to protect their cubs, and then they're probably going to either eliminate that threat or scare the threat off.
Yeah, and it's an instinctual response. It's not, like I said, it's not like it's not the level of choice that human beings can make. It's pure instinct. Like if this happens, then this happens. If this, then that. It's really like, that's a good way to look at second density. If this, then that.
Yeah, they're not going to look at you and be like, I have kids over here, so please get away. Like they're not going to give you that choice.
Yeah, and like plant, like with plant, the plant kingdom and all that, like if it rains, then this happens. If it's dry, then this happens.
Yeah.
If if this, then that. That's real. Like that's the best way of looking at second density. Remember those words. If this, then that. All it's just a constant loop of that, of just responding to one particular event without like no, there's no thinking about it. It's pure instinct.
Yeah.
It's like if somebody was coming at you with a knife, that instinctual thing happens. If this happens, then this happens. If I don't do this, then this happens. If this person is going to do this, then I'm going to defend myself. Like you don't think about it. There's no like, that's that part of you that just comes alive there. You don't think about it. If you think too long, well then of course then you're probably going to die.
Yeah. Um, what we talked about earlier, house pets and certain animals in your household, they don't necessarily solemnly act on instinct. They do act on instinct whenever in terms of eating
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Like if they wake up and they think like, oh, I'm hungry, I'm gonna go wait by my bowl. Like they know that their caretaker is gonna take care of them.
Yeah, and I suppose when you start to get like into that form right there, so I suppose before we get into like before we get into like like there is a difference between a house pet and say an animal out in the wild. Um,
Yeah, a major difference.
So when it comes to like these second density beings or a second density body, um, a lot of them of course all things have a spirit. All things are of the spirit, have a soul. A lot of them, they're not. A lot of the times, they're not. The potential is there, but they're not necessarily activated. To at that point, they're just like a mind body complex. That's kind of really what they are. The spirit is there, but it's not like invoked just yet. What you need to invoke that spirit, that soul within you to become a mind body spirit, mind body soul, however you want to say it. What wakens that up is when you're in that second density level, and at some point in this evolution you become you gain a sense of self. You start to become self-aware. You don't, and maybe you're not saying like I am this, or I'm this person. You just get some form of sense of self, to whereas in second density everything is acting on instinct, which means all things are living in a natural state of how things are, how nature or how the environment is. You're living within that, and you're not disconnected from that. You're just your instincts respond to what's naturally happening, and you naturally respond to what's happening. You And then once you start to become self-aware in some fashion, it's almost like you disintegrate, or not disintegrate, but like you start to distinguish yourself from the pack. You distinguish yourself from this, like the almost in a way almost of this unifying place. You start to become like an identity. You start to form some level of identity, and that's where once you become more self-aware, and now you have the means to graduate that second density and become a third density being. And then that's where you're at the third density is where you're at the level of choice. Essentially, that's what third density means. You're at the level of choice, to where you can make a choice about yourself, about how you want to evolve. You kind of take evolution into your spiritual evolution is like essentially in your hands. When you reach a really mature level, of course, now that's where you start to get like really highly evolved people. But and most animals in the wildlife, they don't have a sense of self. Like they're not thinking of like this is my family, and I'm I'm Fred the tiger, and my brother is this person, and this is my dad, and this is my mom. Like they're not thinking about like this is it, not like Lion King, like the way those movies, the way all those animal movies play out. Yeah, it is. Of course, it's a movie, but they don't live like that. They don't live um, with that sense of self. They're second density beings in second density bodies, living second density lives. Um, but at some point they will become self-aware, and what happens, what brings them, what essentially helps you evolve, it's the next level of being. When the next level of being comes around, the more lower density level, you're more prone to follow along that. you, that person helps you out. It's like if you're what do they say, like surround yourself with smart people and you might learn something. You're probably going to learn something because you're around all smart people, so now it's going to help you in some way. um like human beings, what separates like we're still human beings are animals. We're still animals, mammals, it doesn't really matter. We're still of that, but what separates humanity from the rest of the other beings on the earth is that we're born with that spirit already invoked. We're born with that sense of self. Our bodies are made for that. We were and now we have a choice of we can make a choice. We can naturally make a choice. We naturally have a sense of self. That's what separates humanity from other animals and other water life and all that. Humanity living around animals give animals a chance to upgrade, to graduate to the next level. If you see this all the time when you're around, like like he said earlier, house pets. Like when you have a house pet, at first, like the dog is just the dog. At that point it's still just the dog. It's living up pure instinct. It's hungry, you got to feed it, this and that. But we give these animals a sense of self. We give them a name, and we call them this name, and then now all of a sudden this dog knows its name. It starts to get its a sense of self, like, oh, I'm actually, whatever your dog's name is. If it's Ben, and you're constantly saying Ben, and then next thing you know, you look at the dog, or you don't even have to look. You can call it and just be like, hey Ben, come here, and then the Ben, it knows its name, and it comes down. It starts to become self-aware on some level. It's a very, very early stage of third density, but at least it's still there. So now they have a sense of self. You kind of help that animal graduate into the next level. So like when your animal passes away, now it can when it's in its spirit form, now it can decide whether or not to, what it wants to do with its evolution. What does it want? Does it want to incarnate as a human, or does it want to wherever incarnate in some a third density body somewhere. um um but animals that are living out in in wildlife, they're going to take a heck of a lot longer than in their evolutionary process. And that doesn't mean hey, I'm going to go out to the wildlife right now, and I want to help these animals move on to the next level because I want to help their evolutionary process. That'd probably be a pretty bad mistake, because you're probably going to get killed.
Yeah, plus I mean it's you can't necessarily force evolution upon another creature. Some deers, foxes, some of them just won't get it. I mean, I have seen videos like where people are interacting with like coyotes and foxes, and they do, like, some of them are, they are able to approach a human and form a relationship with them, but that's not smart to do with any, like, in any, you can't walk up to a honey badger and be like, I'm gonna make this little guy my friend, or you can't walk up to a little raccoon and just assume that that you have the ability to turn this little guy into your friend. Maybe there's a chance, but like, always approach every single situation like that with caution.
Yeah, evolution takes time. There's no time limit on the evolution. Everything goes at its own pace. Uh, but I mean, if you're gonna decide to start befriending all sorts of like wildlife, it's gonna take time. Like if you're living in the well, like zoos or something, people who take care of zoos, or there's all sorts of, I don't know what you want to call it, sanctuaries around the world where people take in, I don't know, maybe they take in wolves or something and they help nurture them, or they take people who take care of zoos. They're constantly around these animals, and then from there they get to form that relationship with these animals, and in turn you learn to become more in harmony with these animals, with nature, and in return you gift these animals, or whatever, the possibility of reaching the next level of consciousness. You help them fire up that spirit from that's within them, and that's kind of where you get like that's like essentially second density. And then you get into, then this is where we get into third density, whenever you become self-aware, sense of self. From there we get to the third density, and I've pretty much already explained it a little bit already. The third density is essentially just the density of choice, where you can now make a choice. You have a sense of self. You can say, I am this and I am that, and I want to be this and I want to be that. I want to do this. Like that's where you have goals and you have intentions, and you can power up your intentions with your thoughts and your energy, with the energy within you, your emotions. You learn about your emotions. You have these, like, you can do something with you can do something with this instinct. You can choose to ignore your instincts. You can maybe hold off on them. You can think, you just have all these tools at your disposal. And that's where you're going to find human beings have a third density body, and they have a third density, we start off with third density, and from there, we this is kind of where we're going to stop when it comes to like the density parts of things, because there are levels beyond fourth, fifth, we go, depending on how you look at things, there's where the densities end. This is kind of where we're going to really leave it at. But I suppose a good way to even explain this evolutionary process right here, when you look at like a baby that's, a baby born, they're, of course, they're in a third density body, a third density vehicle, but their consciousness is at a very low level at that point. They go from first to second. They don't have, babies can't distinguish themselves from their surroundings, and you guys will recognize this. This will be familiar to you guys. There's even videos about it. Like there's like funny little videos of people saying like, oh, when you're just living life, and then out of nowhere at 3-4 years old, you just become self-aware, like you're just there. Now you're like, holy, like, then not like, there's videos like that. That's a good way of where the evolution of life reflects on humanity. Like I was saying, babies, they don't have like they don't separate themselves from their environment. Like they're one with their environment. They're one with whatever's going on. And of course, they're reliant on their parents. They can't think for themselves. They can't think. They're very, if this then that. If I'm hungry, then this needs to happen. If I need to use the bathroom, I just go. Like you don't think about it. They can't think to hold in their unless something is going on inside of them, but they don't really think to hold in their bladder. They if they got to if they got to urinate, they urinate. If they got to poop, they just poop. They don't think about it whatsoever. It's everything is pure instinct at that point. And then once,
Yep, you kind of see animalistic behaviors.
yeah, and then when you'll know a baby or a toddler, as they're growing up into their toddler age, they're still second density level of consciousness in a third density body. But as soon as they utter the words mine, well, actually, first before getting into that part, where it's about to happen is, if you're a parent, you probably know this already, or you've heard of it, or you've experienced it. When babies have separation anxiety, it's like you get to that point from like in between your baby being a baby and before it becomes a toddler. You get that point of like where you just can't put the baby down. Like no matter what like you put your baby down, it's it's kind of crawling around, or maybe it's learning how to crawl, or it's learning how to do these things, but you carry it, and then you set him or her down, and then they just cry. Like you cannot put them down. That's their way of dealing with this separation that they're now experiencing. They're experiencing this separation because they're, like I said, all they know was this. They don't have an identity at that point. They're essentially one with everything. They're living in that. They're living within that. Now out of nowhere, something is happening to them to where they got to start. They're starting to figure out the world. They start using their the tools that they have, their hands. They start learning how to crawl. They got to use all these things. It's almost like that spirit is starting to awaken in them, and they're starting to become aware that they're making that transition from, they're in between second and third. And like I said, it's the separation anxiety. If you're a parent, you've experienced it. You can't put your baby down because they'll just cry and cry and cry until you pick them up. That's their way of dealing with this separation. And separation anxiety, that's on a deep level, on a density level, that's what's happening. They're trying to deal with what's going on with them on the inside. And then of course they learn to live with it. They learn to like everything, they adapt. You use what's natural and you adapt. And then that's when you get to the point, then there becomes a point in time where they start to mutter the words like mine. Once they say mine, now they really have a sense of self. Now your baby or this toddler or whatever is now officially a third density conscious being at that point. Now they're inhabiting their third density consciousness. And then from there, that's where they'll live their life up, then they can you raise your consciousness from there. You can become a very, very, very highly evolved being while being in a third density body. Unfortunately, most people kind of live at this third density even their entire life. In a perfect world, you can, you raise your consciousness, like you're kind of third density until maybe your teens. Then you become a rebellious teenager. You start to separate yourself from, and you want to find your own identity. Third and fourth densities where you're kind of like, you're still looking. You have the potential of being like more of a victim to your circumstances. You look for others to blame. It's like very another responsible type of living. And then once you are able to make like more mature choices and become a very responsible human being, that's when you get even higher in the densities where you become more self-responsible. Like, like your life, everything, you're responsible for everything that you do, and you accept consequences as they come. And, then you keep on going up. But like I said, unfortunately, a lot of people don't really make it past a lot of that. Everyone, like, the world is full of a lot of victims and perpetrators, and a lot of people not taking accountability. I suppose things are changing now, because now it is a time, we are experiencing a time where accountability is a huge thing, and people
Yeah,
are.
there's like a major, like a really huge shift going on that a lot of us have not, our grandparents have never seen before in their entire lives. Like there's just, I mean, obviously if you're watching the news, I mean, you're gonna see it. You're gonna see a lot of shifting happening, especially being on social media and stuff. People protesting and people being more at peace with themselves. A lot of people that might have been addicts in the past are starting to find more. They're starting to find a sense of healing. You know, people are finding more therapy and stuff, and people are actually opening up. They're starting to open up more about their feelings and being able to communicate with other people, because I think humans are starting to realize that it takes two.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, you know what I mean. You just need to. You have to be able to speak to your neighbor, I guess, in a sense. Um, and I think in with that third density, it's like the this is the third density is where before we get too far into that, the third density is like another way where kids, everybody, not just kids, everybody, well, yeah, kids in that early phase, everybody differentiates themselves. So, you know, that's where you get your identity from, and that's where you're able to create your life pretty much, create your own reality and just kind of go from there. It's the place where you just where you're choosing and you're deciding what it is you want to be and who you want to be in this life and what it is you want to do. Um, it's I guess it's ultimately like the it's like the realm of pure separation. But obviously, we're making that climb up the ladder right now, where people are starting to leap more into the fourth density way of thinking, where people are, you know, they're actually joining hands and they're starting to make people take responsibility for their actions and stuff.
Yeah, another I'd say those are like, that's right there is probably a more later stage of, like, probably the fourth density, because once you leave third density and going into the fourth density of consciousness, you're still like, you're still looking to somebody, you're still looking for somebody to, like, tell you how you should be living your life, because that's like the staples of third and fourth density, is you wait for somebody to tell you what you should be doing or how you should be living. uh
By the
un-
way, there's nothing wrong with that. Like having somebody, you know, to be there to kind of tell you like, hey, like what should I be doing right now? Like he's not saying that like there's anything wrong with that, but what he's kind of getting at is like you ultimately have to kind of come up with those answers on your own.
yeah, like, for sure go, you can for sure seek advice from somebody, or like, for somebody you look up to, and you kind of take note, you can take note, but all at the end of the day, like, you really have to decide for yourself what you're going to do. What separates you from an other responsible and a self-responsible is whether you say, well, they did it, so I did it. I'm only doing what they did, and it's their fault. Go talk to them. Rather as saying, like, I saw them do it, and I wanted to try it out for myself, and it didn't work, but that's on me because I was the one who chose to do that, and now I'm accepting the consequences. That's what separates you from self responsibility and, like, another responsibility. Another way of looking at that is, unfortunately, like, politics. Like, we oftentimes we wait around for these figures to fix things for us. We're going to vote for this person because they say they're going to help, they say they're going to change something. It's like we wait for these outside, from this outside world, we wait for all these things. I'm not going to change my ways until this happens, or I can't change my life, I can't change until this happens, I can't change until that happens. That you're constantly looking for you're constantly pointing outside of yourself. This person is going to make things better, this person will is going to hold my hand and gonna lead me to a better life, and this person's gonna help me make better choice, or this person's gonna, like, if once they do this, then I can make a better choice.
Yeah, once this guy gets in office, things will definitely change. It's
Or
always it's
it's
something like that all the time.
yeah, essentially, like, that's where you're, that essentially, like, you're still living at an other responsible, like, you could still take, you might take responsibility in some aspects of your life, or you could still, of course, you could still be a magnificent person, a very good-hearted person, good intentions, and you still might, wait for an outside source. That doesn't mean anything, but when in levels of consciousness, it does mean something. In order to move higher, in order to move higher up, at some point in life, you have to become self-responsible at some point, and that's when you graduate to higher, you don't all into higher densities. And that doesn't mean you're always going to make the right choice. You're going to make the best choice possible that you possibly can in that given moment. Now,
That
and you're, but no matter what happens, you're willing to accept the consequence, and you accept the choice that you made. That's what separates you from being, that's what makes you self-responsible, is you made a certain choice, and now you're accepting the consequences rather than blaming whatever's happening.
Yeah. In order to get to that point too, you have to be at a very high level of thinking. When you explain it, and like whenever we talk to this stuff about friends and family, when we speak on these matters, like it sounds like it's like kind of easy to do, but it's not. You have to almost be like at a sense of peace with yourself, and that's not easy to be at peace with yourself. It's not easy to look within, and it's not easy to face your problems, because that's where a lot of the taking responsibility for your actions come from. You have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, like, I'm wrong. Like, I'm absolutely 100% wrong right now, or what I'm doing is completely irresponsible.
Or
And
I did this.
yeah,
Or
I did this. I hurt that person, and I knew exactly what I was doing. You have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that. You have to be able to talk to yourself. And it sounds weird because, like, I do talk to myself every single day, but I don't do it around people. I think there's like that inner dialogue where I have conversations in my head with myself, and I'm talking myself through problems, and that voice is always helping me and guiding me too at the end of the day. Like, there's always something there. I got to a point now where I can kind of just almost like self-soothe and figure out a problem that I caused on my own, and take responsibility, and at the end of the day apologize for any wrongdoing that I might have necessarily bestowed upon someone. But whenever it comes to taking responsibility for your own actions, it's not easy to do those things. Most people, they just deflect. They'll deflect it whenever you try to. You can't force it on somebody. A lot of times people are going to deflect it and say, well, why should I do it whenever he's not taking responsibility? He's not doing it. Mm-hmm. And you'll see that in little kids all the time. Like they're always pawning off trouble onto someone else, and then they'll play the blame game with each other.
I'm not going to say sorry until he says sorry, or I'm not going to do this until he does that. It's like it's a little kid thing. Like, you're waiting for the other person to do something before you can finally do something. And unfortunately, a lot of people live their lives that way. Like a lot of people live their lives that way up until they're even in their old age, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've seen 50, 60, 70-year-old people doing this stuff, being in the bar industry. You see this stuff all the time, people pawning off problems and stuff, and people not taking responsibility, people doing really horrible things to other people and then just being okay with it.
And the good thing about evolution and the spirit of all things is the idea of once you pass, like, you can, if you live your entire life that way and you become an old person, or then you still live life at that level of consciousness, well, it's not the end for you there. Like, it's not like you failed or anything. No one's sending you to some imaginary hell or anything. You have the full doors open to you to keep on going with your soul evolution. That's why you have another life to go. There's the whole, you only live once. Sorry, but it's not true. Like, you live this particular life like right now in a linear time, yeah, it seems like you're only living once, or you live this moment and then it's gone. Like, yeah, of course, but I mean, uh, on a bigger scale, life is life. There's no like reality. There is no death. It's just a transition into a larger life, and it's a transition from one realm into another. Like you have the full, like you're in your spirit, and you can go you can live a life in another, either as the same person as you were, except but maybe you're going to make different choices to where a whole different slew of opportunities show themselves, or you might want to, reincarnate as somebody totally, somebody else, or you might go live life on another planet somewhere else, or you're gonna know what to do with yourself once that time happens. Once that becomes a thing. So, life doesn't end when your body drops. Like you can still progress. You're still gonna progress no matter what. Then you're gonna keep on progressing and keep evolving, because that's the whole point of, that's what the soul wants. It's what your spirit wants. Your soul wants to evolve, and you're always going to become more. You're always going to become more.
Yeah. Uh, Energy can neither be created nor destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Like once you leave this life behind, you're just gonna jump to the next octave of reality or existence, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no end to it, and it sounds like it doesn't sound like a realistic thing, or it doesn't even sound like something you could possibly fathom. Well, yeah, I mean, we get that, we understand that, but obviously you can't just, it's hard to wake up every single day and think that this is just it, that this is just life, this is it, this is all there is to it, because that'd be crazy to just believe that, this is it.
Yeah, a lot of people who really like, unfortunately, I'm sorry if this is how you look at life, but a lot of people who do look at life that way. There is a certain demographic of people who take that and use that to their full advantage and say, well, if they do believe that this is it, then they're going to live their life to the fullest extent, or they're going to do whatever they can do that and still think about others, or they might think like, oh, I'm going to live my life the way I want to, and I don't care about anyone else's about the consequences or the things I do to other people. They might live their life that way. But a lot of people who do tend to think that way, though, in some ways they become it's a kind of bitter about life, cynical about life, and honestly, a lot of those type of people, they have some sort of they do have some sort of depression, like, because they just don't, they think that this is it, like this is all there is, like what's happening is this is just life, and I just gotta live it, and I gotta live it like everyone else is living, and I gotta do this, and that's true, that you're gonna have to live life, yeah, and everyone else is living life, and you gotta live life too. But if you just accept that there's nothing more to you than just that, yeah, I can understand why you might. I really could understand why you might be depressed or something.
Yeah. Um, a lot of times, I'll just we'll move on here in a sec here, but a lot of times whenever people tend to think that way, they become heavily depressed, and they just kind of don't. They have like a really negative outlook on life. A lot of times, there will be a lot of times where there will be like a completely life altering event that happens to them that completely changes their perception about how they view life, like near death experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Or stuff like that. They'll have near death experiences, and then they come back with stories saying that, like, I was laying on the hospital bed, and then I remember looking at my body, and I remember hearing the doctors saying so and so and so, and then you come back, and then you wake up, and then you tell the doctors, you recite the words exactly back to what the doctor said, and they're like, how did you know we said that, and then people, they saw themselves outside of their bodies, so they truly understand that they're more than just a human body.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it takes life-changing, life-altering events like that to happen in order to get you to see and to understand that this just isn't it.
Mm-hmm. And then, and of course, if you believe in the law of attraction, like if you truly believe like this is it, like you're gonna attract experiences to yourself that are gonna enforce that belief on yourself. Like, okay, like you're saying this is it, like the universe is saying, yeah, this is it. because that's how you're looking at life. That's how you're living your life, as if this is it. So now you're all you're getting is experiences, just reinforcing that idea, until you finally start to like really dig deep in yourself, or dig like, why do you like whatever's going on with you, whatever's happening, until you start really digging in, or you just at least open yourself to the idea of like, you know the mysteries of life, like what is this all about, what is really happening. And you got to be open to those type of things. You have to be open to those ideas, and you have to be open to what may present itself to you. That's when then the universe starts, life starts presenting you with other options.
Yeah, like energy attracts like energy. Uh, the matrix pulls itself into itself, in a sense.
Yeah. And then one thing I wanted to say, I was going to say earlier about, you can get people who come off as very responsible, but they masquerade that as, well, kind of immature decisions. And that's where you get people like, you can look at a very rich and successful person, and they did all the right things to become that. They did, well, not all the right things, not all the time, but they did whatever it took to get to that certain point. Or you get the rich and powerful, but they're busy destroying, in order to get in order to win something, someone somewhere has to lose something. Like, that's just how it works. In order for you to gain it all, someone somewhere is losing it all. That's the unfortunate reality of it. The more power you gain, the more power that it's being taken from somewhere. But I wanted to like relate that to like the destruction of like of our planet. Like, a lot of that's a very, very low level way of thinking of life. It's a conquering. You're conquering. You want to conquer, and you want to you want to own everything and do with what that is however you please. You say, like, this is my land, so I'm going to do whatever I want. If I want to chop down all the trees, I'm going to chop down all the trees. If I'm going to, or you might do heinous things to to acquire that land, or or move people off of that land so that you can get drain it of its natural resources.
Or manipulation.
Yeah, manipulate. Those are very low, or not. They're, I can't say low level thinking, because you can be a very there's a positive way of living life at a high level, and then there's a negative way of living life. You can become a very advanced. It is true, you can become a very advanced being by going a negative route as well. And then I'll not maybe I will dive more into that when we in a different episode, when we talk about like densities, and when we get into the positive and the negative, and how you can become highly evolved even as a negative being. But of course, we want to well aware of the positive. So the destruction of our planet, like, when I think about it, I think about what I said earlier, like human beings. And then I think I said in a different video somewhere that, like, our purpose as human beings, that we're how we're meant to be the caretakers of the earth, and we're meant to be the highest evolved creatures, I should say. I'll just say creatures, because I don't know what to call us, animals or mammals, whatever. The highest evolved creatures on the planet, we're meant to lead. Um, and in order to, in order for that to happen, you know, you're not just you're not really just born wise, I guess. You kind of have to make, so you have to make some mistakes in order to really like, you know, uh evolve in a certain way. uh you can't just you're not gonna you can't be kind without doing something kind, but um I'm gonna go into what I had written something in preparation for this, and I'm just gonna read it, and it kind of touches on kind of everything we've already said. And then towards the end of it is where you know Taylor in the beginning said we're going to talk about the seven sacred teachings, seven sacred laws. I I wrote about that, but I'm gonna read this, and it's kind of a history lesson and how we can we can learn from our history. So, without further ado, I'm just gonna read it. Um, and I had written this, honestly. I had written this before, uh, like earlier, before I even knew we were gonna talk about densities, to be honest. So that just kind of happened. So that's why there's not really no talk of there's not a whole lot of talk of densities in what I wrote here. So I'll just get right into it. So I wrote, first off, humans are animals too, mammals, whatever. The difference is that we have the ability to think and make a choice, whereas the others react purely on instinct. But because they are going based purely on instinct, that fundamentally means that they do what is purely natural. There's no time to think because they aren't thinking. Everything that happens in nature is completely 100% absolutely natural. We as humans are able to learn something about ourselves from these occurrences. Animals teach us about our nature. We as humans have forgotten our nature. This is on purpose. I said in a different episode that humans are meant to be the most evolved beings on the planet because we have the ability to think and choose. How long that takes is completely on humans. You can't become highly evolved without making really dumb choices. You don't know the value of something until you're about to lose it. Take a certain species on the verge of extinction. They become highly protected. Like, if that relates to like some sort of animal, like when they're on the verge of extinction, like they really do become highly protected, and there's major consequences. Or even a dying language or a certain way of life that is being threatened. You learn the value of these things. Why do we wait until the last minute to decide the importance of something? Why not celebrate it while it's alive and well, and not until it's either dying or gone? Other planets lost their chance, or it became too late for the physical aspect of its life. The spirit of life has no time limit. A long time ago, there was another planet in our solar system, and this is probably about well over 700,000 years ago. There was another planet in our solar system. What's left of it now is what we know as the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. This planet was known as Maldek. This society became highly evolved in terms of technologically advanced. They became advanced in these terms, then used their tools without thought or care to their environment, leading them down a path of self-service and negativity, of course, having a negative impact. It's said they thought what they were doing was for the betterment of all. They had the belief they were serving others and leading a path of positivity. The reckless behavior caused the disintegration of their biosphere and led to war on their planet. So much war, they blew the whole thing up. So I don't mean to laugh at that, but That's the asteroid belt. That like
It
there's
does
a lot
sound
of
it does sound kind of funny though.
like
You
you
know?
think about it, like yeah, they that would be it's tragic, of course. But yes, there's a lot of war, and they blew themselves. They literally blew the whole thing to smithereens. That's the asteroid belt. So laughing aside, so much war they blew the whole thing up. Like, just the way I wrote that, traumatizing all, and causing this massive knot of fear that the souls of those on the planet were tied in a knot, like this knot of fear, for a very very long time, where they couldn't be reached by any. They were tied in this knot of fear. After some time, there were highly evolved beings from elsewhere that were able to reach them and help aid and untie this knot, where they were able to realize that they were conscious, and then they could begin their healing from the they could begin healing from this experience and balance out their karma from the life that they had just lived. Part of this karma was to bring a balance within their consciousness. If you remember, I said they became technologically advanced to the point of destruction, but they thought that what they were doing was for the betterment of all, service to others. They had a distorted view of service to others. It was distorted to the point they acted not in service to others, but more service to self. So although they thought they had good intentions, their vision was distorted. So they needed to balance that out and replace their destruction with a less distorted vision of service to others. Since there was no planet for them to go back to because they'd blown it up, they had to choose somewhere else to incarnate. This led to them being on Earth, but at the time there was no acceptable bodies that were similar to the bodies they had on their planet, so they chose to incarnate with what was there, being the ape. The ape being the closest thing to the human being, but not near the level of thought or dexterity. Without these more advanced uses, they couldn't be manipulative to the extent that they at one time could be, and they couldn't be dexterous. After some time of evolution and alleviating their karma, they were able to incarnate as human beings once Earth reached a certain point in its evolution that humanity was born. Some stayed and became human, essentially starting over again with the ability to again think and choose at a more advanced level, and others left to other planets to continue their evolution. Some of these beings also remained in their form to this day, and this is where we get a type of Bigfoot. Before we talk more about Bigfoot, we'll talk about Mars. This part of the story takes place, this part of Mars history takes place, I'd say, about 75 or so thousand years in our past. At one point, there was a civilization that inhabited the planet we know as Mars. The people of this planet were of a bellicose nature. They had a tendency towards aggression, war amongst one another, with tools of destruction growing as the desire of destruction amongst each other grew. Again, causing a lot of difficulty in their planet and their environment, causing it to become inhabitable. You guys kind of see the pattern here. Long story short, there was a guardian race that took the beings of Mars, genetically modifying them and moving them from Earth to Mars, essentially melded their social memory complexes with those beings. And maybe at some point we could go more into that. At this time, the human being, at this point in its evolutionary stage, had the capability of standing on its own 2 feet, but wasn't quite there yet. They leaned forward in their position, mainly staying on all fours. So they leaned forward in their position, mainly staying on all fours. Hold on, I'm gonna kind of pause from this part. This red. I don't know if you've ever had that type of dream. Maybe you guys have too. Have you ever had a dream where you're running and you're trying to run really fast, but you can't? Then out of nowhere, you just get on all fours, and you almost start like galloping in a way.
Yeah.
It's like that. or you might see pictures of cavemen or something, and they're on their feet, but they for some reason they have really long arms, and they're leaning forward, and they're not standing upright, they're standing with their fist into the ground, kind of like that. Or maybe a monkey does, or an ape does. That's where the human being was at its evolution, at that point.
For those of you that don't know, I'm sure a majority of you watching this kind of know what it means, but bellicose, it means war. So he's talking about a war-driven society. Kind of, I mean, it kind of sounds familiar, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you look at a lot of spiritual communities or anything, or we there's like this talk of like that memory is there, like Mars being this warrior, this war brother, like this war planet.
Yeah, yeah,
It's in the memory of that. If you look into these like spiritual communities, you'll find that when people talk about Mars being the war planet, um, well, this is that memory there.
yeah. And there's actually there's a couple movies about it. Maybe in future episodes we'll kind of dabble more into the ideology of war, and talk about the movies that kind of present the idea that they're wars that happened on Mars and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Mm-hmm. Now we get back to another type of Bigfoot, this being a mixture of ape and the human being at the time, genetically modified and engineered to be able to withstand nuclear war should it ever come to that. They have the bodies to be able to withstand the radiation that we can't. They inhabit the deep, uninhabited forests all around the world. These ones are few and are able to escape detection from anyone. Um, and that's kind of like you'll anytime you hear of Bigfoot or something like that, it's always in some sort of deep forest, or you catch a very rare sighting of them. Um, you catch rare glimpses of them, but it's like you can't find them. This is because they just have this unbelievable ability to just escape that detection. They know, like they feel when people are around, they know to stay hidden. And then also they also inhabit like deep taverns that are inside of the world as well. Uh, the other type of Bigfoot comes in uh, the form of a thought form. That being a thought form is essentially like if a bunch of people put so much thought into something, this thought form can appear somewhere, something like that. Just, it sounded longer when I wrote that, but now that I'm saying it, there are legends of Bigfoot all over the world. Practically everyone has heard of Bigfoot. With that many people with this idea of Bigfoot, we are bound to catch a sighting somewhere. The type of sighting where it seems they appear 1 second and then disappear in the next. This being an entity with the capability of being in astral form and then creating a physical body, a Bigfoot body, appearing in the physical form for whatever reason, and then being able to turn its body from physical back into astral form, appearing and disappearing. Um, that's kind of like, I can't remember where I even heard this from, but they said that they had somewhere in the world. I'm trying to think of where I even heard this story, but someone somewhere they got a glimpse of they had caught like a Bigfoot. They caught Bigfoot. They went into this I don't know what do you want to call it, like where you uh, let's just call it a fort for this sake of this story, where there's only one way to get in and one way to get out. Like if you go through the front door, like you can't, there's no like passageway, there's nothing to be able to, the only way out of there is to go through the way you came in. So these guys, they had they saw this, and they were all lining up. Let's get the town together and let's catch it. They all, there were people watching this fort or whatever you want to call it, and they were saying, gather up everybody and let's catch it. So nobody had let this fort out of their sight. Like they all knew that this Bigfoot was in there, and then they went to go and inspect, and it was gone. Like they looked all over the place, and they were like, they couldn't find it. They couldn't find it. There was no way out of that. So that informs that they could that they have the ability to be in an astral form, spirit form, and they can create a physical body. Well, this entity can use the energy of the human memory of creating this particular body, which is Bigfoot, materialize, inhabit this body, and then at the same time disassemble that physical body back into like a spirit body, and they're back into being a spirit, an astral form.
Yeah, dematerialize in a sense.
Yeah, dematerializing. That's essentially what like a thought. That's what I mean by thought form. Like they have the ability to move back and forth between the physical and the spirit realm. So I say all of this to say that if we look at the history of these planets, they essentially waited until it was too late to do anything about their own environment. This memory of these past events, the destruction of these planets, are deep within our memories. We know deep down the type of destruction that is possible if we aren't careful. Those are those long forgotten memories making an appearance to remind us, don't do that again. Humanity, being the youngest species on the planet, is destined to be the stewards of this planet. We are meant to be the leaders. We are a species that almost didn't make it, but the spirit of humanity has always been alive and well, so we have that fight within ourselves to keep going, even in the face of adversity. But sometimes we wait a little too long before we decide to do anything about our situation. Again, we've had to make dumb and not so wise decisions, because how else are we going to learn the value of something without almost losing it or on the path of losing it? Again, we can learn from animals to remind us of something about ourselves, and they come with specific teachings. Our indigenous people have always lived with this knowledge. It's in our culture. We've always been connected to nature, animals, our humanity, and our spirit, and the spirit of all of life. Us indigenous have not forgotten humanity's purpose, being the caretakers of the planet, to lead the rest. That's why when there is something happening against the best interests of the environment, you'll usually see indigenous people either there first or on the front lines, or they have the loudest voice, and often that voice goes unheard. We have the 7 grandfather teachings. I'm not sure if it's the same in every indigenous culture, but to the Anishinaabe, which at its essence, Anishinaabe means human being. We have these ancient teachings that are here to help remind us how to live with one another and to live in harmony with nature. They are here to remind us how to be a human being, and each teaching comes from the mouth of a different animal to remind us of our nature. 7 grandfather teachings, or 7 sacred laws. Represented by 7 animals to help as a reminder to humanity of our close connection to nature. The buffalo, Mushkade Bijeke, respect, Minadin Demoen, or Minaji Iduin. I've seen the word respect be those two words. I've always been more familiar with Minaji Iduin. The other one I didn't know that until recently. That was just another word that I saw. But Minaji Iduin means respect. That's one of the sacred laws. Respect all of life on Mother Earth. Respect elders and people of all races. The essence of respect is to give. The buffalo gives its whole being for the life of the people. Number 2, the eagle, Migize, love, Zagi Idwin. That's love is the second sacred law. Always act in love. Love the Creator, love the earth, love yourself, your family, and your fellow human beings. The eagle brings vision that is always based on love. The essence of love is understanding with empathy and compassion. Through the unconditional love of the Great Spirit, we've all been given the ability of vision and to make our visions come true. Bear, Makwa, courage, Zungi Idwin. That's courage is the third sacred law. Listen to your heart and living from your heart. It takes courage to do what is right. It takes courage to be yourself, the way the mother bear would die to protect its children, and it would die before allowing any harm to come to its children. Bigfoot, Sabe, honesty. Gwekwad is a win. That's honesty is the fourth sacred law. Never lie or gossip. Be honest with yourself and others, speaking and living our truth from the heart. Being true to your word, not judging or condemning others, but speaking well of others and honoring their uniqueness within our human family. Beaver, Mick, wisdom. Nibwaka win. Yeah. Wisdom, that's the fifth sacred law. Everyone has a special gift given from the Great Spirit. Show wisdom by using your gift to build a peaceful world. Our gifts don't belong to us. They belong to the people, to serve good. If a beaver doesn't use its gift to build, its teeth would grow long and it would die. If we don't use our gifts for the greater good, we too would become sick spiritually, and this could manifest itself as a sickness as well, leading to death. We could also lose our spirituality, not using our gifts. Wolf, Maingan, humility. Debatendizin. That's humility. That is the sixth sacred law. Showing gratitude for the life you're given and not overstepping the natural laws. Humility is knowing none of us are above or below one another. Think of others before yourself. Humble yourself to the Great Spirit by being thankful. The way the wolf leads its pack, so could we learn to lead. Turtle, Mikanak. Truth, Dibwe. Truth is the seventh sacred law. We refer to our motherland as Turtle Island. Always seek truth. Living the truth is living the seven teachings. Living truth means living in the spirit of respect, love, courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, and truth. When we live truth, we will know peace and find the truth of our humanity. Our spiritual constitution is written on the turtle. The turtle lives in the water and the land to remind the world of the truth we should be living by. The animals that represent the seven sacred laws ensure that we live a close relationship with the land and nature. These animals are our relatives and live in harmony with each other. When one walks in the spirit of these seven sacred laws, one becomes truly free. The universe truly opens up. You get the full support of the universe and the forces of the earth. Living these teachings to the best of your ability, live these teachings to the best of your ability, and it will lead you to Mino Bamatzuwin, a good life. Mino Bamatzuwin. You can say Bamatzuwin or Bamatzuwin. I've heard it say both ways. But that means a good life. And that's what I wrote down. To anybody who is Ojibwe or Anishinaabe and you are a pretty fluent speaker, I am sorry if some of the pronunciation was a little off. I myself am learning, and by no means am I fluent. So just a disclaimer there.
Yeah, it just takes time. So I mean, I don't think you really have to go into too into detail about what he's trying to get at, what it is he was saying, in pretty much harmony, peace and harmony is what essentially which is what he's saying. There's obviously a lot more, and there's layers to everything he said, but in a nutshell, it means live in peace and live in harmony with nature.
Yeah, look to and if you need to remind yourself of who you are, just go out in nature.
It kind of sucks though. I mean, I understand there's some of you people that grew up in cities, big cities. I'm not talking about like population 150, 200, 300. I'm talking like cities where there's over a million people and you don't necessarily have access
New
to
York,
nature.
yeah, New York. Let's just use New York City because it's probably one of the biggest cities filled
Yeah.
with.
So you might have grew up in a city like that. Well, there's just something about going out into nature and just spending time out in the open, next to a mountain or sleeping by a tree or just doing something. It just has a way of making you feel a certain particular way, because I know whenever we were staying out in nature, it felt like everything was heightened. Like senses were heightened. It felt like the dreams were more vivid, and it just felt like you were just waking up with a constant breath of fresh air all the time. Like if the way we're talking about nature, like whenever we stayed out in nature and when we were living out in Bear Butte, it was different because like we were such young. I mean, we're still young, but we were so free spirited and carefree and stuff. Now in our lives right now, we got other things going on that to where we can't necessarily do those things right now. But like we still take time to take walks out in parks, take walks and appreciate the fresh air and watching the trees just wave back and forth in the morning time. Like waking up, sitting on the back deck in the summertime and staring at the trees. Like there's a couple houses that we stayed in where, you got a clear view of that. And I don't know, it's just like the sounds that the wind produces as it's pushing up against the tree, just the sound of it. Like if you tune out everything else and you don't hear anything but that, it has a way of like playing like a song in your head almost.
Mm-hmm.
And same with the birds. You wake up, you can hear them early in the morning. They're just out there singing away. And same with, when it comes to nighttime, you hear the crickets and all the little critters outside making all kinds of noise, especially if you live by a lake or a pond. It's a lot more heightened. But city people, they don't necessarily have access to those types of things, and sometimes people, they grow up their entire lives never really honestly being able to have access to those things, nor do they. Sometimes they don't care. They don't
Yeah,
care to.
yeah, because to them the city has everything that they could possibly need to live life the way they think life should be lived, or how they to their perception of life. Like uh yeah, they don't have to care about nature. They don't have to care about any of that stuff because like they you know that it's almost like not to them, it's almost like not of their nature, but of course it is their nature. um and honestly, I don't even think I can imagine living life like I can imagine living life in a city, of course, because we lived in a city, and I do like the city life, and I do enjoy the busyness of it. But what I can't imagine is like I'd like say New York City or something. I can't imagine growing up there or being born there and living there all your entire life and never once venturing outside or never once taking a trip to just to some form of nature outside of the city to like to somewhere else. I imagine there's just this unbelievable disconnect that you just feel. Maybe you're not. Maybe those people aren't even aware of it because I could see for me like now like I have like the experience of living in nature, of course, uh, and of course we're indigenous, so it's that it's like it's in our DNA to like know our nature. So if I was ever like if I was still me, but I was born in like New York City, I feel like I would have this unbelievable tension in my body, being in the city constantly, because there would be like I know there would be a call, or there would be like this undeniable feeling of like I need to get out of this place and I need to go see go do I just get out of the city or something, go do something else. But it's like, but I can, if I take my current self now, like I said, with the experience of living in nature and being around nature, yeah, I would live in New York City, but I know for a fact that I would have to take time away. I would have to like make it a point to not become stuck there. Like I would have to like make time to, not just like once a month or anything, like often, like a lot of the times, to just leave the city and go do something, go do something in nature. I would have to do that, otherwise I know for a fact I would feel that uh that pressure of being disconnected, or that pressure of you kind of get a glimpse of it when, if you're somebody who sits inside all, let's just say it's a nice day outside, beautiful day, but you, instead of going outside, you just you sat in the dark all day, and you didn't even think, you had a feeling to go outside. Oh, it's a nice day, I should go do something, but instead you didn't. You almost end that day with like, there's this weird like pressure that's just in your body, because uh it's just there, and it's almost indescribable. Like you can't like, it's like this urge, it's almost like an urging feeling, like I have to get outside, I have to go do something, I have to do this or that, I gotta go touch a tree or something, I gotta go walk on grass, I gotta go do something. I feel it'd be like that multiplied by so much more. uh but like I said, unfortunately, a lot of people who probably live and die in those cities, they probably don't have that part of themselves like turned on 100% of the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would um I don't know. It's just a weird thing to think about. You know, like there's people that are born into this planet, born in this world on this planet, and they don't necessarily, they're not introduced into that lifestyle, nor do they necessarily have an interest in it. Like, everyone kind of has their own things that like make them excited and stuff, you know. But at the end of the day, like, what would you do um, if for some reason society just collapsed? There was just a huge society collapse, you know. Every For some weird reason, all power structures, everything completely went out, and then all of a sudden we had to learn how to like, you know, let's say after all, because we know what it leads down to, you know, let's say after all the rioting and after a bunch of buildings are burned down, what do you do after that, after that point? Like, what would man do? Would they like decide to just say, you know what, let's just move out to nature and start, you know, hunting wild game, and like, you know, we'll start our own small communities and clans and stuff like that? Like, what would it be like for people who grow up in cities and never actually experienced that type of lifestyle?
Hey,
That,
oh, go ahead.
like, I honestly don't know what it would be like. That's just a hypothetical thought I had. But when people grow up in cities, it's like, you're so attached to the idea of, like earlier, like what we were talking about, separation. You're just so attached to the idea of separation. You don't care about those types of things, because in cities, people have more of a cutthroat mentality, you know, and we've said that before too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't necessarily see another human being as like themselves. They don't see that other person as a relative to them. And you'll hear that a lot in Native communities, and I didn't really realize that until later on. But like, you know, a lot of Native Americans or indigenous communities, they say that's my relative right there, that guy right there, that's my relative.
Mm-hmm.
Like growing up, hearing that, you think that relative just means like that's
Like
a cousin.
like your cousin or something, or your auntie and uncle. But like native, indigenous, we have the belief that all things are like, we're all relative to each other. We all need each other. All things are our relatives. and that includes trees, it includes animals, it includes the rocks, it
Yeah.
includes everything. Everything is your relative.
Yeah, you're
It's recognize the oneness, the harmony, and the oneness, the unity of all things. That's what that means when we use the phrase. That's at its essence the deeper meaning behind we're all related, we're all relatives. It's
yeah.
that it's recognize that unity.
Yeah, you're relative to one another.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's what it means, you know. And like you hear sometimes in indigenous cultures, depending on where you're at, there's always going to be that one guy who's really deep into his spiritual mindset. And he's all everything he says is always like few words of wisdom, and it's just like it hits home. And like a lot of times they'll look at animals and they'll say that's our relatives right there, you know. And they'll point at a flock of geese or something, or they'll point out like a bunch of horses or something, or they'll say like that's my relative right there. Growing up, when you hear that, you don't think nothing of it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like you in your mind it's just, you know, that's a cousin, but it's obviously more than that.
Mm-hmm.
But with societal structures, I think I'll say this all the time, man. And anytime I talk about big cities, man, people who grew up in big cities, you need to step outside of that big city, and you need to go camping, or you need to spend some time out into some nature. I'm not telling you to not be cautious, because you should 100% be cautious and be mindful. Like if you see a rattlesnake on the ground, do not try to pick it up.
Yeah, I'm sure by now you guys should know. You guys probably know by now too. To they don't fuck with the rattlesnakes.
Yeah, just be wary and be cautious. If you're gonna decide, if you finally one day you decide like, you know what, I am kind of tired of city living, because we met a friend of ours. I won't say his name, but we met a friend of ours who grew up in like who grew up in city living, and he grew up actually like two opposite sides of the country. One side, you know, on the west coast, and then the opposite side, I think in Florida somewhere. But deep down in his heart, he was like, man, I just really want to like go up to Alaska, and I just want to live like a self-sustainable
Oh
life.
yeah.
And he, I just want to, I want to leave. Like, I just want to get away from all this living, and I want to go up to Alaska and just live up there and do my own thing. I want to hunt. I want to hunt my food. I want to go fishing, and I want to live off of the land and stuff. And sure enough, he did it. He literally did it like a year and a half after like we parted ways with him.
Almost immediately. No, well, I think almost immediately he did it whenever he left us in L.A. I think almost immediately he did go straight to Alaska.
Yeah,
But I don't
and,
know.
and
But
when
as
he
far as like what he did up there is is kind of a mystery to us. But we know he did accomplish a lot of what he set out to do.
yeah, and that's like when you see people do that stuff, like whenever they say I'm gonna, like they have these huge goals in mind and they're speaking from the heart and they tell you this stuff, and then when they actually accomplish it and do it, and they, you know, you hear about it or you see about it on their social media pages, you're like, wow, like he really meant that, man. And it feels good to see somebody accomplish something like that, especially whenever they have a huge goal like that set in mind, because he was an independent man pretty much, you know.
Yeah, whenever you speak those type of things, like that type of those type of desires, and it's like it's really from the heart. There is no like there's no denying it. There literally is no denying that feeling. There is no denying that goal that you have once you like when you really feel it in your core, you really feel it in the heart, and you start to express it. Like there's no way you can ignore it. There's like becomes a point where like, you know, when people be like, I'll do it later on, I'll do it next week, I'll do it this time, I'll do it that. Like it at some point that feeling grows so huge to where you cannot deny it, to where all you can do is act on it. Like you have no choice but to act on it and actually do something about it. You know, you can wait for the feeling to grow so huge that you have to, you have to be very drastic about it, or you can, feel that desire, and then you can take the little steps every single day to at least moving towards that goal. You can do essentially one of two things: do the little things every single day to help bring that vision into your reality, or let it build up until it's like almost until your life could potentially start falling apart around you because there's something around you, there's something within yourself that's building up, and it can almost become destructive to you because you're not doing anything about it. That can manifest itself in the outside world as like your life starts falling apart. And often that's what happens to a lot of people. Their life falls apart, or they go through very traumatic events, or they might they lose some big investment, or they might their house burns down, something happens, something dramatic happens, and now that's finally like that was the kickoff point to finally to do what's in their heart. um that and I can say something similar, except it wasn't like, no, like whenever we took off, like that was like something I wanted to travel in the fashion that we took off in, and the fashion that we did. I wanted to do that for like a long time, just a long time. And then it just like it got to a point where everything lined up for it to be able to happen. But it also, like it said, it became a point where it was undeniable. Like I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't ignore LA anymore. I couldn't. I always knew, like I was growing up always saying, like, I'm gonna go to LA one day. All I gotta do is just do it. I just have to do it. Like that was always the sponsoring thought that was in the back of my mind. And then one day, it just like everything going on at the time, it all just so happened to line up so perfectly. But it did happen in kind of everything did kind of happen in like almost in a drastic way. And then and it was just, there is no ignoring this. We just got to do it. We have to just do what we have to do. And then so that's why I know, like, when you have to do something in this life, you're better off just do little things every single day. If you're going to write a book and you think it's too daunting, well, then just write a sentence a couple times a day, or just maybe write a paragraph every day, or maybe write a page every day. Start little by little, and you can do that the whole way. Or pretty soon that 1 page a day becomes 2 pages a day, or becomes 3 pages a day, and then it keeps on going until it's finally finished, or things like that. Or if you want to become a music producer, you have to start somewhere. You have to take little things every single day to do that. If you want, that could mean just watching YouTube videos. Maybe you can look up all the maybe there's a producer you look up to, look their videos up them on YouTube and see, look at tutorials. How do they do it? You could, if it's just one video a day, and then that turns into more. There's just make small steps every single day to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Or you can go all in. You can quit your job and put your all into this thing, and then just hope it works out.
Yeah, that's how a lot of success stories happen, where people just kind of they just kind of quit. Like they stop everything and they put all their eggs in one basket, and then they just bet their life on that because it felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah. And usually what separates them from succeeding is they don't allow any sort of doubt into their lives. They absolutely know 100% in their soul, in their heart, that they are going to make it. If you were to just quit your job, but every single day you're like, I don't think it's gonna work. I don't think it's gonna work. I don't believe in myself. But you're going through the motions of doing something, but you have this belief that's like, you're so unsure. Like you constantly doubt so much. More often than not, you're probably not gonna succeed in the way you want to. You might succeed in small ways, or you might not succeed in the way you want. Maybe making a living off of what you want to do with your life might not be a thing, or off your passions might not be a thing. Maybe it's like, maybe you might have to just let it be a hobby, and you can only get to it whenever you can get to it. And you might have to pick your job back up again, or do stuff like that. You have to absolutely know that what you're doing is going to work out in some way.
Yeah.
The
You
goal
you have
and the goal is of course to be profitable. Like you want to make a living doing your passions. Like that's everybody's dream. You want to be able to earn a living, whether you're rich, wealthy, or you're able to live, live comfortable. That's like those are the goals. Um, when it comes to like your passions. Um, I mean, because I'd be lying if I said like, I can if weren't profitable in some way, and that I still have to go, do what we're doing now for the rest of my life. I'd be lying if I said I'd be okay with that, because I wouldn't be okay with that.
yeah. Yeah, no, I feel the same way. You just kind of have to go about choosing the life you want, and you have to follow your feelings. You can't just do something and be like, I don't really know how I feel about that. Maybe it could work. Maybe like, you can't really think about it like that. You have to be kind of dead set. You have to be sure about what feels right and what it is you want to do or pursue.
And you have to be courageous enough to admit it, and courageous enough to speak it, to talk about it, to let that energy out of yourself. You have to be courageous enough to live that, to live whatever it is you want to do. You have to live it, and you have to embody it.
Yeah, I for the longest time I wanted to write a book for the longest time, but I never actually pursued it. I just because the timing just never felt right, and I was kind of like, that's what I just wrote sounds stupid. Like that's how I felt. I'm like, that doesn't make sense, and it doesn't correlate with what I'm talking about, or it just I feel like people will laugh at that, or I feel like you're speaking from the heart, but you keep on judging yourself, and you keep on falling backwards, and you're like, you know what, I'll just set it down, and then I pick it up a few months later, then I'm like, look at it, and then I'm like, I don't even know what I was talking about right there. Then I scrap that, and then I just try to reword myself, and then but then it got to a point to where I'm like, uh, I really have to like put my heart into this. Like if this is something I want to do, if I want kids, people, adults, uh, if I want them to open up their imagination, then I have to. This is a gift that I want to offer to people, and I don't want to hang on to this information, knowing damn well that I don't want to take it to my grave and never offer that outlet for somebody, or like I don't know, my book could it could save someone's life someday, or it could ultimately it could make another kid want to be feel inspired to write his dreams down too, or write whatever he sees in his other lives.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter to me. I finally got to a point where it just tipped. You just reach a tipping point, and you just don't want to hang on to things anymore. You just want to release, and you want to start putting your creativity in motion. With all that being said, I understand we kind of went in some different directions here, but that's kind of tends to happen, especially whenever you talk about anything that that's just speaks on life, because when you start to talk about life and spirituality and nature and animals and stuff, it'll take you in so many different directions, so but I think we kind of understand. um we didn't necessarily go into this conversation or this topic speaking about nature in a sense of where like most people talk about nature, because when you dabble into the idea about nature, a lot of people think that like they want to talk about how human beings destroy nature. Well, we know that. We
Yeah.
understand, and we know that. It's just we wanted to approach this from a different angle, I guess you can say. We don't like we understand, like, yeah, like,
Well, not just nature, like in terms of like trees and plants and all that, but like when you think of nature itself, like what that embodies, like all of our nature, like the nature that's inside of us, like what is our nature?
yeah,
The nature of something, like when you think of like consciousness, well, what is the nature of that consciousness? It's like you hear that, it's like stuff like that when you hear nature. And when we were talking about in the beginning where we said we were going to talk about nature, we didn't necessarily just mean plants and animals
Yeah.
either. But we did talk about, of course, some little bit of destruction because we talked about Meldeck and Mars and how they basically destroyed themselves.
Yeah, that story itself, guys. By the way, that's you're not gonna find a lot of you're never gonna learn about that unless you actually you dabble into searching for those types of readings.
Yeah, you definitely need to look outside. You're not gonna find it on anything. You're not gonna find it at any mainstream. Uh, you're not gonna find any of that in like any mainstream media or any mainstream book that's about space and Mars. Like no, I don't think any mainstream high school book or college book for that matter is gonna talk about Mars in that fashion. I don't even think any of NASA. Like, of course we do our, of course, people, whatever you want to call them, astronomers, scientists, or whatever. Like, we know there was life on Mars, but what the heck? What was there? Like, oh, we find evidence of water. Was there life at one point? Like, was like we like those are questions that are being asked right now about Mars. But just like all things, there everyone is we're all missing. There's that missing key component that we talked about in the last episode, and that's the spiritual aspect of things. And when we start asking those type of questions, more things become available to us. Um, a lot of those things that I talked about, I that's what I learned from a lot of spiritual books, but mainly I learned that from the law of one material, the law
Yeah.
of one the raw material law of one. I learned a lot of that from there. Um, and I mean, there's still unpacking so much of that. So if you guys are ever wanting to dive more into that type of stuff, I would definitely look into the law of one. And then the seven sacred teachings, of course, you've heard of those things growing up. We know people from back home who teach those things. But I also am a huge fan of the Turtle Lodge up in Manitoba.
Yeah.
So check them out too.
The I guess in plain words, like to answer that question that people have, yes, there was life on Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
There was there.
there was absolutely undeniably because we live in a world right now where we question everything, but we're never sure about anything, and that leaves us constantly standing in the corner, like still questioning things all the time.
Well, there's this no one like there's this feeling of like there was there life on Mars. Like, there's this feeling where people, like, they have this feeling of, yes, there was life on Mars, but everyone's waiting for proof. Everyone's waiting for that. And again, everyone's waiting for that outside point of view. Everyone's waiting for an astronomer to say yes. Everyone's waiting for the scientist or NASA to go up to Mars and dig up bones. Everyone's waiting for that's what everyone's waiting on for this outside point of view, other responsibility at that moment. No one's listening to that feeling that's deep inside that's yelling, yes, we know there was life on Mars. Now, just because we know there was life on Mars, people are going to say, well, then what happened to it, Mr. Know-It-All? Sometimes you just can't answer everything, but you know the answer to one thing. Is there life out there other than Earth? Absolutely there is. Of course there is. Do extraterrestrials exist? Yes, they do. You need to admit that feeling. You need to search that feeling within yourself, and if you feel the answer is yes, then say yes. Don't be like, oh, I think there is, or or
Be like, I want to believe,
I
but
want
then
to
you kind of look over at your friend and he's like, I don't believe it. Then you're like, yeah, actually, I don't believe it.
or you're waiting for the government to say yes, there's aliens. You're waiting for the government to say yes, Roswell, we picked up a crash and we picked up aliens. And You're waiting for you're waiting for Area 51 to be disclosed. You're just waiting for all these things to happen in order to validate what you already feel on the inside. And for most people, the vast majority of humanity, they do believe in aliens, for the mass majority. But everyone, for some reason, everyone, like even people in the spiritual community, they're still, even they themselves, they're waiting for the government to finally come out with the truth and say yes. Of course, I could understand, because a lot of people they depend on the government, or they depend on these officials to say yes for them to finally be able to validate. But you know, at some point you gotta stop waiting for other people to validate something that you already do feel, but you're scared to admit it, because maybe you're scared to look like a weirdo to people. Like you whatever it is, you got to put all that to the side at some point and become a self-responsible human being,
And think outside the box.
yeah, and just think like you don't like, or people are afraid to be challenged. Like, well, if there's aliens, then have you ever seen an alien, or have you ever seen a UFO? Where's the proof? You hear all those like that type of stuff. You don't have to engage in that type of argument. You don't have to engage at all. You can say, yes, I know there's aliens, not I believe there's aliens. Yes, I know there's aliens. And you don't have to prove shit to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, if you want proof, there was ancient civilizations that walked this planet long before us. There's hieroglyphs. They spoke about wars in the sky. They talk about these deities coming down, and like, I don't know why we have to sit here and keep on playing around with the idea of like, well, do you think it's true? Do you think it's true? Like, even if all the information was disclosed to you, like if somebody came out, if a government official came to you and showed you proof that that aliens existed, you would just be like, I knew it.
Or now with the scary thing with like AI, now people can just result at anything. No, that's probably just AI. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Project Bluebeam, but I have a feeling like AI can become a huge part of that, like this fake disclosure of like extraterrestrials. I feel like AI could play a part in that, into that. And then another thing I was gonna say, when it comes to these topics, is I kind of lost my train of thought there, but like I was saying, like at some point you gotta stop waiting for disclosure to happen for you. Like, you disclose it for yourself, and then, like I said, you don't have to. Oh yeah, now I remember what I was gonna say. When it comes to people who are constantly searching for proof on things, law of attraction, baby. They're looking for proof. They're demanding proof. Life is gonna keep on giving them reasons to demand more proof. They're demanding proof. They're getting those experiences of demanding proof because they're demanding proof, and they're never gonna get the proof.
Yeah, it's like saying, I want that bike over there. And the universe is going to be like, you want the bike. Wanting is just, it's that you're saying, I want it. You're not saying I have the bike.
Yeah,
you're saying,
yeah, you do. It's saying, yeah, you want that bike.
Yeah. And then the bike is going to keep getting away from you. And you're going to say, but I want that bike. And you're going to keep pointing at the bike. And you're going to say, but I want it. And the universe is going to say, you want the bike. You want the bike. And the bike, wanting is a statement to the universe. You're saying you want something.
It's the lack the lack of something.
Yeah,
and that's what you're really saying. That's what you're really saying. I lack this, and you continuously lacking. Now, if you say, unlike like you don't necessarily have to say I have the bike, I have this bike. No, you got to start doing things to be able to make that you having a bike come into your reality. You got to start doing something. Maybe you gotta take the steps to make that a possibility.
Yeah.
If you're a kid and you're depending on your parents, well, maybe you gotta do chores or something, or be a good boy or be a good girl, and then maybe one day then your parents will buy you the bike, or maybe you want to buy it yourself, so you got to do something to get that to happen, because in your mind you see yourself having this bike, and you feel it, you feel this experience inside of yourself, you feel like this is going to be so much fun when I have this bike, and you have all these ideas, like you're living it in your mind and you're embodying it, and that right there is fueling you. Like, you don't have to sit there, like I said, you don't have to say I have the bike, I have the bike. It's not, if you sit there all day and just say I have the bike, and you just sit there and say it and not actually do anything, well, that's something different. You actually have to put something behind that energy. You have to actually do something. So it's like that, like you feel yourself riding that bike.
That's where the masculine energy comes in.
Yeah.
You actually have to act it out, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like you feel a particular way about something, you're like, man, that thing makes me feel so emotional. I want one like that. Like, I want to get something like that.
Yeah, your feminine energy is alive right there. Like, you feel this deep within yourself. Now you actually have to do something about it.
A mass majority of the time, anytime I want something or I want to do something, I don't necessarily say, man, I want that. Like, in my mind, I tell myself I'm gonna get that. Like, I make it a point to where I say I am gonna do this. Like, if I say I'm gonna go do something, at least 9 times out of 10, I do get up and go do it. Like, I will make sure I do it. Or if there's something that I want to get, I will tell myself I'm gonna get that, and then I make it come to fruition by making things happen.
Yeah, start taking the steps, doing something at least every single day to make sure it happens. And you keep on making these decisions, or you keep on doing these things until it finally happens to your satisfaction. Like, I achieved it. Now what? It's now what do I do now? And then you keep on expanding from there. You keep on growing from there.
Yeah. I just want to say this real quick. With the whole nature and the destruction of the planet and stuff, it's common sense. It's like it's a basic fundamental. You do not destroy the physical environment that supports you. You know what I mean? You don't, like, that would be like you buying a home and then slowly destroying your home and then being mad that you destroyed your home.
Yeah, a little thing like that too. Like, take little steps every day. Start with maybe the world is too daunting of a project. Start small. Start with your own home. Make sure your home is clean. Make sure your house is clean. Make sure your carpets are clean. Make sure your floors are mopped. Make sure your room is clean. Make sure things are tidy the way you like it. Your house is clean. Okay, now make sure your yard is clean. Make sure your trash is picked up. Make sure you keep up with your yard. Now, once that's done, now maybe you don't got to go cut everyone's grass, but I mean, maybe you start walking around the block and you just start picking up trash, and then you make sure your block is clean. Make sure the no trash gets left behind. And anytime you walk down the street or you're walking your dog and you see some trash, pick it up. You start little by little doing little things like that. And then if you're feeling enough energy, well, maybe you start walking up and down the ditches, and then you start cleaning all the trash, and that you start cleaning all the trash everywhere. That might inspire somebody to want to do the same too. That just might, like, if you were to, let's just say if you went to the same spot every single day, let's just say there's a field near a busy road in the town, and let's just say it's really dirty. If you went to the same spot every single day at the same time, and you were clean, you made effort to clean, and people drove back and forth, and they constantly see you here at this specific time at the same spot cleaning, you're embedding that idea into a lot of people's heads, like that it's speaking to something that they know they should be doing too. Maybe there's probably hundreds of people driving by that same location still thinking to themselves, man, that field's so dirty, somebody should clean it. Everybody, and that's the thing, everybody's waiting on somebody. They say somebody should clean it, somebody needs to go do something about this. They're waiting for somebody else to do something instead of taking matters into their own hands and doing little by little. But then next thing you know, they see you out there, and then next thing you know, they're like, you're speaking to something that's in them, And who knows, you maybe somebody pulls over their car next, maybe somebody pulls over their car and maybe they start helping out, or maybe you show up to that spot at that same time, and then next thing you know, somebody beat you to it, and they're there cleaning up too. That might be that could be one of them fairy tale scenarios, but that's the possibilities that are there. That's the possibilities of life, of doing little things. Just start little. Start with your own home. Make sure your house is in order.
Well, the with the taking action and just like kind of like people seeing you doing that and then wanting to do it. I remember one time I was in I think it was Hollywood and Western. Yeah, Hollywood and Western at the train station. I remember I walked down. I was waiting at the platform for the train, and I remember I looked. It was like me, and there was maybe like two other people, and then there was two cops like a little distance away, still waiting for the train on the platform, and there was trash all over the place. There was just trash on the platform, and I got down there and I like looked around, and like I saw how dirty the trash was. Like, whenever you look at trash and there's like it's wet sometimes, and there's like I like looked at it and I thought for a second, I was like, man, this is gonna suck, but I can't just leave this trash here. I started picking up the trash, and then I started throwing it all in the garbage, and then there was two police officers. I think they saw me. They saw me picking up all this scattered trash all over the place. And then I leaned down, grabbed some more trash, and then I brought it to brought it to the garbage, which was like over here. And then I turned around, and then I saw them start to pick up the trash. But before I got down there, they weren't picking up the trash. I think they saw somebody, like a regular civilian, taking action and being like, somebody should really pick up this garbage, So by them looking at me doing it, they felt inspired to pick it up, which felt good. I was like, oh wow, like they looked at me, saw me picking up the trash, and then they started picking up trash, like tiny things like that, like really like.
And that might carry, yeah, and that type of thing might carry them wherever they go now. And maybe they're at a different part of the city or something, or another thing, and then anytime they walk, or even in their personal lives when they're off duty, maybe they're just walking down the street with their family, or maybe they're walking down the street by themselves and they just see they just see some trash on the ground. They remember that, and they're like, and they remember to just pick it up. That action carries out.
Yeah, anytime I go for a walk, I always make it a point to pick up trash. Like if I'm going for a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mile walk, like there's always a time where I'll see trash on the ground, and I'll make sure and I pick it up. And sometimes I will bring a small garbage bag with me because I know I'm probably going to see trash, but like it's a good thing to teach your kids too. Like if you're with kids, because we 100% make sure we instill that into our kids' minds, we walk and then we see trash on the ground, and I encourage them to pick it up and like bring it to the nearest garbage. And it doesn't matter who did it. It still needs to get picked up at the end of the day. We can't just leave it there, and it can't just be one of those things where you say, well, I didn't do it. Like, it's not my problem.
Yeah, it's not my trash, that's their trash. And then a lot of people, of course, they think of like, I don't want to pick that up. It's, it's going to be dirty. Then I got that, and then I got to go wash my hands, and then I got to run back home, and then I got to do this, and it's like making it such a big deal. Like it's a big deal to go wash your hands.
Yeah.
It's stuff like that, little things like that. It's like people make things harder than it has to be.
Yeah, it's not my responsibility. Well, I mean, it is our planet, and we do live on this planet, and it is the only planet we have right now. And if we destroy this planet, well, we're going to be just like Maldek, and we're going to be living. We're not going to be living. We're going to be obliterated, stuck in a loop, in a sense.
Yeah, and then yeah.
With what you said earlier too, totally great point, man. Make sure how you live is a direct reflection of how you feel on the inside. That's a good point to touch on. Like if you're living in a dirty home and you just have no desire to clean, a lot of times, like 7 times out of 10, that's usually how someone feels on the inside. Like what's going on in the external is usually how they're feeling on the internal. So like if you walk into somebody's home and it just reeks and it's dirty and there's trash all over the place, and and you're like, man, like their place is just disgusting. Well, rather than like, coming from a straight judgmental point, you have to think like that's probably how they feel about themselves on the inside. Like they're probably going through something and they just don't want to fix it right now.
Yeah.
Like that's usually like I said, that's usually what it is, you know. You don't just act out this way and then just do things. You don't just throw trash all over the place because you're like
Yeah.
you're not coming you're coming from a place almost like a place of depression.
Yeah, if somebody's house is disgusting, honest, and if they themselves say yes, I know it's disgusting, they feel disgusted with themselves. Or if you look at their house and they're like, if you walk into their house and it's just, you could tell they're just not being, they're being lazy. That this is just a lazy way of life. They're probably just very, very, very lazy. Or if you walk in, it looks like you just get that feeling like, man, this looks like they just gave up. Oftentimes that's how they live their life, like they just gave up on life and they're just going through the motions at that point. They don't even care anymore.
Yeah, you just have to approach that with some understanding, you know. Like if you're a really good friend and you read the situation, you can totally. Not every one of your friends is going to be open to like advice and stuff. So you just got to kind of let it pass because we all got that one friend that kind of lives a little dirty, and you just got to kind of be okay with that because you actually kind of need some of that odd balance in your life. You know, I'm not saying go outside and live in a trashier yards and stuff, but like your home, if it makes you feel comfortable, then so be it. If you like hoarding stuff and you like collecting things, so be it. But at the end of the day, when you hang on to things like that, it's a reflection on how you feel about life. Like you're hanging on to all of these possessions, you're probably hanging on to a lot of emotions and feelings that you've yet to release, or you're hanging on to so much trauma that you just don't want to let go.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of just the way it is, you know.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of just kind of make things on like, and it's all like that too isn't always like it doesn't always have to be like kind of like a like have a negative connotation on it either. Like uh just a fun little story. Like it reminds me of I was watching this video of it was this, I think it was Kitchen Nightmares, and it was a Gordon Ramsay, and at a very he was actually at a very very a good restaurant, and he he got the dish from the he got his dish, and it looked really really awesome. It was a very very complex dish. It was a really complex looking dish, but everything looked stunning. And even Gordon Ramsay himself was saying like, yeah, this looks very like, it looks stunning. It's essentially what he said. But he's like, but he's like, often as a chef, your food is a reflection of who you are. It's a reflection of where you're at in life. When you become very very secure in yourself, you don't have to make things look super super fancy. You don't have it You become more simple with your ingredients. The more secure you become with yourself, you're not trying to make everything look like something grand. Whereas he called it out. He's like, I see this plate, and I see, like, as beautiful as it is, it's telling me that this chef is isn't sure about himself. He's not sure about his abilities. He knows he's good, but he's insecure about them. He's not sure about his abilities. So he masks that feeling by doing all these little intricate, these detailed things to all, like, just complicating it when it doesn't have to be complicated. It could just be super simple. And he eventually breaks it through to this guy, and then the guy becomes more secure in himself, and he learns to become more simple. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's
Guy was
that's
an
a great.
amazing guy was an amazing cook, outstanding chef, but insecure and unsure. So he masked that by over complicating things rather than being simple. Because sometimes we often think that's too simple. That can't be it. That can't be the right way because it's just too simple. But
Yeah,
it's like oftentimes that's kind of where you need to be at sometimes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's Yeah, guys. I mean, we kind of just went off. We just went off in a couple different directions here, but everything is still intertwined and still relates to one another. As far as human nature and nature itself, and the nature of nature and the
Mm-hmm.
nature of animals and stuff. This probably didn't necessarily go the way you thought it was going to go, but like this is the direction that we're going to be approaching almost in every single situation, is just from a different point of view rather than face value, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really have a whole lot to add on to that.
Neither do I.
Yeah, I guess we just, again, this is
Leave you
well,
guys how we always do. Subscribe, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like like the videos. Turn on your notifications so you know when we drop. Follow our Facebook page. You Instagram. Hit us in hit us in our emails. It'll be in the description and all that.
yeah. Well, we appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah, to all you guys who take time to watch our videos, we truly appreciate you, and thank you from the bottom of our heart, from all of our heart. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for listening, guys.